Lines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
And welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. Well, the federal auto safety regulators are coming under scrutiny this week over their handling of the safety concerns with several Toyota models. Since last fall, the Japanese automaker has recalled about 10 million cars worldwide because of defects that can cause runaway acceleration or braking problems. Questions are being raised over why it took federal regulators so long to force Toyota to take the action. Earlier this week, the insurance giant State Farm revealed that it had alerted the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as early as 2007 about safety issues with certain Toyota models. The Detroit Press reports that in 2003, as many as 27 Toyota owners alerted federal regulators about their cars surging unexpectedly and in some instances accelerating even more after they stepped on their brakes. Not once since the first complaints were filed did the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration subpoena records from Toyota.
Congress had scheduled hearings to probe not just Toyota, but the response from federal regulators for this week. But the hearings were postponed due to the snowstorm. One of those scheduled to testify was longtime consumer advocate Joan Claybrook. From 1977 to 1981, she headed the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Up until last year, she was the president of Public Citizen. Joan Claybrook joins us now from Washington, D.C. Tell us what you would have testified before Congress, Joan.
Well, my major concerns have been, one, that Toyota didn't undertake these recalls when it should have. Toyota has known about this problem, several problems actually, since I'd say about 2004. The lawsuits were filed against them by that time, and when lawsuits are filed against major companies like Toyota, they go into great detail to find out what's going on. So the company knew for a number of years, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration also knew because it got some excellent complaints from consumers. It opened 6 investigations. It closed 6 investigations, and the only result was small recall by Toyota. I believe it was in 2007, and it was only 55,000 vehicles. And Toyota said, well, we've addressed this issue, and the agency was satisfied. What concerns me is that National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has tremendous authority to do its job. It is underfunded, it is understaffed, but it has subpoena power. It could go after the company. It could go after the dealers, the suppliers. It has a test facility in Ohio where I believe it did do a test or 2, but it didn't really find any particular problem and ended up closing its investigation. It could hire consultants, the best in the world, worldwide. It could hire people to help them with this issue. And also it can go to trial lawyers. It can ask their experts. It can put out consumer bulletins, ask people to let them know what's going on. So they really did sort of pro forma investigations, and as a result of both Toyota and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's inactions, people had been injured and killed, and the problem was not resolved until right now.
Well, Joan Claybrook, what about the public disclosure issues here? When the Highway Administration did these small investigations, did they publicize them at all? Did they produce a public notice on them? And what about the insurance companies themselves? Obviously, they are at risk in terms of expenditures for these kinds of accidents. Didn't they blow the whistle and say, hey, we're getting a lot more claims than people realize?
Well, the work that the agency does is made public when it opens an investigation. In fact, it didn't really open a formal investigations except one. It was mostly just researching and trying to figure out what was going on and then closing them. So there wasn't any real publicity about it, so the public didn't know. In terms of the insurance industry, State Farm, which is the largest insurance company in America, did alert the agency that it had noticed some problems with sudden acceleration in Toyota, and it did it for several years. And the agency, quote, took that into account, it says. But they didn't require Toyota to do very much. And in addition, what the one recall that Toyota did was a floor mat recall. This floor mat recall was tiny, but it finally, in October, filed papers with the Department of Transportation and said that it was going to recall 3.8 million vehicles for floor mat problems where the floor mat gets stuck in the accelerator, but that it did not admit that it was a safety-related defect. And so here we have a situation where the company would not even acknowledge that it had a problem. Yet I think that it's more than just a floor mat, and because a number of crashes have occurred where the floor mat's not even in the car and the accelerator jams to the floor. It's an incredibly dangerous type of defect. It's the kind that DOT and the company should have been right on top of and alerting the public. I think that Toyota did not want to admit that it had an electronics problem, which I believe is what's going on here. And in part I believe that because one of the things that they're doing when you bring your car back to get a new floor mat, is that they are putting in an electronic brake override system into your car. It's a software change, so that if there's a competition between the brake and the accelerator, the brake will be superior and will stop the vehicle.
Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood appeared on ABC's Good Morning America Wednesday. He was questioned by George Stephanopoulos.
But, Mr. Secretary, did it take too long? If you go back several years, there have been complaints going back to 2004. And one of the complaints you hear is that the agency is just too cozy with the companies. You've got this kind of revolving door problem where people leave the agency and then go work for the auto companies, and they tend to curtail or slow down investigations.
George, our people went to Japan. Our safety people went to Japan and met with the Toyota people and said, look, we've got some big issues here. We've done some investigations, and you need to fix your cars, whether it's the sticky pedal or whether it's the floor mat issue. And I was on the phone with Mr. Toyota about 10 days ago, and I told him that he really needed to start paying attention to these safety issues. And I think our safety people have been on 24/7 with these folks and really held their feet to the fire, and we will continue to do that.
That's Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood speaking to George Stephanopoulos. Joan Claybrook, your response.
Well, my response is that since Secretary LaHood learned about this in November, I think that he's been very tough and pushed hard to get Toyota to do these recalls. What I'm talking about is the period from 2004 to 2010, and why the agency was not Johnny on the spot, but was really just very lackadaisical about it. And it is true that two former employees, engineers of the enforcement office at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, did go to Toyota. They still work there, and one of them, a guy named Santucci, was in charge of persuading the agency to narrow the scope of its investigations so that the company did not have to supply certain kinds of documents and information. And the problem here is not only that that the agency is underfunded, but that there's a huge imbalance of knowledge and resources between a company like Toyota and the government agency. And that's why the government agency needs to use subpoena power so that the company knows that if they don't give all the documents, relevant documents to the agency, some executives could go to jail. And the other thing is that there are no criminal penalties for covering up a defect, and the amount of the civil penalty is only $16.4 million, which is chump change to Toyota. That civil penalty needs to be $100 million to $200 million, so the company knows it's going to get a real civil penalty if it doesn't recall dangerous vehicles.
Joan Claybrook, what about the revolving door between the regulatory agencies of government that have